Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Peachies for another great showing of the Encore Overwatch League. As tonight, the Peachies Nectarines take on the University of Oregon Ducklings. Now, the Nectarines come into this riding a hot streak, currently 4-0 on the season, not dropped a single map yet. The Ducklings, on the other hand, come into this with a 500 record of 2-2 with a map differential of +2. But with all that out of the way, I am Dextron. The man to my left is Disastrous Fox. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing amazing. It's amazing to be here with you once again. I always love casting with you, and especially a series that we've got coming ahead of us right now. As you said, just the Peaches Nectarines doing very well right now, and the Ducklings kind of on the edge, teetering between positive and negative. So this match is going to mean a lot for both of these teams. Possibly not as much as it could do later on in the series, but certainly still quite a decent amount. How are you doing, by the way, Dex?
I'm doing amazing right now. I just rushed here from another sort of casting gig, and I'm happy to be here again with the Peaches as they are slowly becoming one of my favorite organizations to cast for. But looking at these two teams
Slowly.
again, looking at these two teams again, both me and you kind of talked about before we went live here. The Nectarines have a big SR difference when we are looking at them. You said it was about 3,300 AV for the Nectarines and about a 2930 AV for the Ducklings.
Yeah, around there, around 2,900, 3,000 marks, somewhere around there. I didn't do the actual maths behind it. I just sort of looked at all the numbers and went, yeah, it's about that. So we should expect Nectarines to possibly play at a slightly higher level than the Ducklings here. But the Ducklings, really, this match is going to determine whether or not they are at a positive win-loss. So I think that can, in a way, motivate some players to play above their typical SR range. Especially when you're playing in a team. So it will still be an interesting matchup to see. And it's only about a 400, SR difference between the two teams. So there is still a chance that those teams could play very similarly.
Yeah, but like we talked about, Nectarines, a perfect 100% or 1,000% record right now. Not dropped a single map so far. Uh, the only team so far to do that. So you could see that as sort of a target on their backs right now. The Ducklings want to come in here and say, "Hey, we were the first team to take a map against the Nectarines," as will be the case for the Nectarines until someone actually does finally beat them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are only in week 3 of the series right now, so there still is plenty of time. If Ducklings can take a win away from Nectarines here, that might be the beginning of the end. We could see Nectarines possibly slowly lose more and more. All it would take is Ducklings getting 2 wins, Nectarines getting 2 losses, and then they are even scoreboard. So everything is entirely possible here. Everything is entirely to play for, and it is going to be very interesting. But before we can judge who is going to be coming out on top, we really need to get to know the players that are going to be coming in on this. And I believe we will have the rosters for the teams. First up, we have here the Peaches Nectarines starting roster. With some very interesting players coming out here. We have Frosty and Several, both on those DPS picks. Epic's Ray and Mobilized on the tanks, and ADS and Cola Guy Pepsi on the supports for starters. The icons are a bit wrong there, but the characters will show you who they really prefer in these matchups. And I have to say, from the limited amount that I have actually seen of these individual players, they seem very comfortable in these roles that they are in.
Yeah, and I have to talk about the tank line for the Nectarines here. They have been absolutely dominant through their first 4 games. Every time I've had a chance to call them, I'm always calling out Epic, Z-Ray, and Mobilize. They are an incredible tank line for this team. A good foundation, if I were to say so myself here. They allow the DPS and the supports a lot of freedom to do kind of their own thing here, because the tank line for the Nectarines has just been so far dominant against the tank line of all their opponents so far. But speaking of their opponents, let's take a look at the Oregon University Ducklings roster here. Now their DPS line is starred here by PK Starstorm and Balsalic. I've said that name incredibly wrong. Tank line is Likeable Orb and Bluegill 1944, followed up by their back support line of Emote and Greasy.
Yeah, so some things I actually really wanted to point out here is obviously we do have Bluegill here on the tanks. Obviously, we just talked about the tanks of Nectarines, but Bluegill has the highest SR out of any player who is playing in today's match. So Bluegill really looking to carry this team higher than any member of the Nectarines. So definitely going to be keeping an eye on the off tank of the Ducklings here. But also, I do think Emote and Greasy specifically are a very strong support matchup. We do see Greasy actually the lowest SR member of the team, so it's interesting that they haven't been able to go with Iroh Ana today. But I hope that this will still play out quite well in their favor. But honestly, the big determining factor, obviously the players are important in these games, but what's more important is the maps that these players are going to be playing on. And I believe for today's matchup, we're actually going to be starting off with Hollywood. A very interesting map. It's a nice map that can allow lots of different compositions to shine, especially at different stages throughout. You expect lots of changes as the maps go forward. But Dex, what are you expecting to see out of any of the members of the team as we take a look at Hollywood here?
Well, Hollywood is an interesting map because we don't normally see a lot, or I have not necessarily seen Hollywood at all through any of the leagues that I cast. This is going to be the first time I've seen Hollywood in a competitive sense, probably in a year. So it's going to be interesting to see. Now, you could come out with a Widowmaker on either side here. It is a good Widowmaker map, especially on the first point. But I kind of expect to see a little bit of a dive comp come out from the offensive team to start here, whether that be the Nectarines or whether that be the Ducklings. It looks like it will be the Ducklings to start here on the offensive side. Defensive side, on the other hand, I kind of expect to see probably a Rhine Diva. Maybe if we don't see that, a Sigma. Oh, wow, I'm completely wrong. A Sigma or Rissa coming out for the Nectarines right now. But on the other side, the Ducklings coming out straight dive comp from the get-go. Basilisk there on the Echo without the Mercy is an interesting pick, but they're going to be playing around this Ana of Greasy and the Winston of Likeable Orb here, just waiting for that Nano to come in and then go in off that, I'm assuming here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Basilisk there on the Echo is mostly just there for the massive pressure that the explosive damage deals, and also possibly the fast ultimate charge that Echo provides, maybe being able to duplicate perhaps the Sigma, or maybe they're expecting a Rhino. However, I would like to point out the fact that the Nectarines here, with you have ADS on the Brigitte and Colaguy Pepsi on that tease, very anti-dive composition. Mobilized on the Sigma, also very anti-dive. So this is possibly the perfect counter composition against Ducklings, despite not knowing what Ducklings are even going to be running. So we might expect to see some changes coming out here, because it's going to be very hard for them to push in onto this point.
Yeah, the Ducklings actually almost able to get 3 members of the Nectarines to start off that engagement there. Greasy throwing in a perfect Bionade, getting 3 members of the Nectarines. Ferro's not able to find anyone. They do have their Nano ready, but Mobilize is able to find the first kill of this match, nearly already a minute into a prolonged team fight here.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's exactly the sort of fight Peachis wants to take. The fight goes on even longer, and Mobilize gets another 2 picks now, coming out onto Likeable Orb and PK Starstorm. Both managing to take out Mobilized in exchange, but if you're Nectarines, you take that trade and you just delay the clock as long as possible. It's part of the reason that this composition is as powerful as it is.
Yeah, one thing that came out there from the Ducklings there, we did see Greasy use his nano there, but it went to the wrong person. It went to Emote instead, so we had a nano Brigitte there instead of a nano Winston. And Likeable Orb did not live much longer. Nectarines finding the first pick off here early in this team fight, as Frosty finds another one onto Basilisk. Mobilize going in, finding Greasy. So far, everything going the way of the Nectarines. Make that 3 members of the Ducklings down. Probably gonna be 4 here soon as Likeable Orb does fall. Probably gonna be 5 here soon as I am staring at Bluegill here out of the mech. Frosty finally able to take care of him. Already less than 2 minutes left to go for the Ducklings to cap this first point.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nectarines are playing a very solid game here. You have Epics, Ray, and Frosty with Cola Guy Pepsi in the backline, and they just get so much damage as Ducklings is trying to push in through all this open space. And then you have Mobilized and ADS pushed up front. ADS is actually going to fall now, but the idea behind that was that they could contest that high ground and have an easy way to back out. Stops the push coming in very well. Basilisk is going to fall, but Cola Guy Pepsi traded out in exchange, and there's no support on the side of Nectarines now. Frosty is going to find a pick onto Greasy, but Emote going to go down as well. Mobilize traded back in exchange, and it's just an all-out brawl here on the point. Everyone trying to pump in as much damage, but Frosty is going to fall now, and Ducklings looks like they're beginning to make some progress on the point. Epic's Ray is going to find the pick here and is still stalling this out. And this might actually be the turnaround. It doesn't even look like Ducklings is able to get a single tick before they're forced back. And they have less than a minute left on the clock.
Yeah, essentially for the Ducklings there, that was a wasted team fight win for them. They clearly did win that last engagement between the Nectarines and themselves there, but the Nectarines just having enough people live long enough, and a nice ult use there by Frosty, keeping Bob on point. Pretty much did not allow the Ducklings to get even a tick. Mobilized, popping the Graviton Flex here, finding one onto Basilisk. Right now, the only one down so far, going after Emote. Bomb coming out from Bluegill, not able to find anyone as Mobilized continues to go in, finds Greasy. Frosty finds PK Star, and so far everything going the way of the Peachis. Mobilized coming right back with 2, make it 3 kills onto the side of the Ducklings, and that might just do it for the first attacking round here for the Ducklings, unless we see a last second test. Several making sure PK Starstorm is not even able to get the chance to see the point.
Yeah, such a solid hold there from Nectarines. They really knew how they wanted to play the map. They had perfect space control. They knew what the open space that Ducklings had to push through. They had a backline defense that would pump that damage out, and then that frontline defense with Mobilized and ADS who would just contest the high ground. They could back off when they needed to. It allowed those 2 players to play very aggressive. You had several on the Tracer, who was just a nuisance in the backline. Eventually did switch over that to the Hanzo for perhaps a lot more burst damage, just trying to get eliminations on the point that the Tracer can provide. But it all turned out well in the end. Really solid play from the Nectarines, and Ducklings here have to be starting to get a little bit worried.
Yeah, you would. If I was the Ducklings, I would be a little bit worried too after easily or handily winning a team fight there, and still not even able to get a tick. Like, they had a huge man advantage there. They just weren't standing on point, and then we saw Bossy throw out Bob on point, just which prolonged just their hold from here. As we are coming over to the caster's booth here for a moment right there. But all the Nectarines need to do here on this point is essentially just cap the first tick, and then the map is over.
Yeah, but we do see a very different defensive setup coming out here from the Ducklings. They are going that defensive dive composition, except you have Emote to defend Greasy in the backline. I would say that's really the only reason you choose Brigitte here, is to protect that Ana and hopefully build up the nano boost. But we do see a lot of damage coming out here onto Epic's Ray, who's trying to get in the backline and get some displacement out. See several. Just trying to land a few rockets, get a bit of damage out in the backline. Frosty, though, is going to find Greasy. It doesn't seem like Emote doing a lot of that defensive support that I was anticipating. And Bluegill is actually going to drop really low, going to get demeched right now by several. Is going to get taken out by Emote in exchange. But Frosty now managing to find the pick onto Bluegill. Trades coming back and forth, but it looks like they're in Ducklings' favor.
Yeah, the Ducklings handily able to win this first team fight here. Weirdly enough, we do see a pharmacy combo, but I don't necessarily think ads was on several there at all, especially through that first engagement. But looking at it right now, the Nectarines are going to come back into this next fight with two ultimates ready to go and close to another three. Ducklings do have one ready to go, but we're looking at it right now are close to having two. Greasy will be able to get a nano here fast. Several, though, starting the killing on to Basilisk.
Yeah, that is the pick you wanted to see counter your aerial counterpart. And now you can just go in, we get the nano boost onto several, dealing a lot of damage to Emo, eventually going to go down to Epic's Ray. And now the damage is just pumping in from all sides. Epic's Ray in the backline manages to take out Likeable Orb. And PK Starstorm also going to fall, and it seems like Nectarines so close to being able to take this tick, and they take the first map of the series.
Yeah, it was just a matter of time there, especially after we saw the nanoed Pharah in the sky with the damage boost. That is absolutely scarier. Frosty with the play of the game here. Interesting, because I feel like there were times where we saw both the tank line for the Nectarines come out and just absolutely just prove how dominant they were. But Frosty getting a nice couple kills here, getting that play of the game. And the Nectarines take the series 1-0 after the first map. Honestly, a very, very dominant showing by the Nectarines so far.
Oh yeah, absolutely. One thing I would like to point out though is I don't think the Nectarines had such a dominant attack. True, they did win and it was relatively quickly, but honestly, they won roughly around the same time that we saw Ducklings having a very dominant fight themselves. The only problem was that Nectarines were able to come back on their defense and eventually stop it, whereas the Ducklings weren't. So I would argue that it was the superior defense from Nectarines that secured that map for them, and their offense was just the final straw that broke the camel's back, is I believe the saying that people use quite often, and the Ducklings just weren't able to handle that. But honestly, the Ducklings should, if they're going to learn anything from that, they need to learn how to counteract those strong defenses of the Nectarines, because that seems to be their pride and joy. It seems to be when Nectarines really gets to shine.
Yeah, honestly, they're like I talked about throughout that first match there. The Ducklings did win a team fight there, but just some straggling members of the Nectarines were able to keep them from even getting a tick there. So knowing that the Ducklings can take a team fight definitely makes me think that there's a possibility that Ducklings can take a map if they're able to find a couple team fights in a row going their way. But so far, the Nectarines just doing a great job keeping their map win streak alive, now at 13 straight maps to start the season.
Yeah, and speaking of maps, the next map that we're going to be seeing coming up here is Busan, which is a very mechanically skill-required map. We did see on Hollywood, it seemed like the teams mechanically were fairly even. I would argue that it was the strategic play of the Nectarines that really pulled them out ahead, something we don't see as often on Busan, but especially in recent months has become a lot more and more prevalent in these control maps, to the point where arguably it is as strategic as some of the other modes now that players have gotten used to how to play this mode.
Yeah, especially on this map, being the newest of just the control point maps here, is Busan. But coming into it, Nectarines did win that first map. What do you honestly expect to see come out here from either side?
Honestly, I expect to see the starting strategies from both sides to be really well developed. I don't think either of them struggles with how to start the game. The only thing is, I think that Ducklings struggles to adapt to how Nectarines is countering them. If Nectarines suddenly changes up their flow to something that's more optimal, I think Ducklings, maybe a few members of them, have the idea and try to execute, but it doesn't seem like they're all fully coordinated on executing the exact same plan, and that is really where they start to fall short, whereas the Nectarines seem like a much more well-organized machine that is going to roll through and really execute their plans to perfection. So I think that is the reason why we do see that skill disparity in the SR ranges of these two teams, as the Nectarines just seem a little bit more cohesive in terms of their overall team play.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Ducklings lineup right here. I really really like their DPS line right now. Or at least I really like PK Starstorm here coming out on the Sombra. It could be if the Sombra is able to land hacks onto the side of Nectarines, it could be devastating for them. But they just can't have the Sombra die first here. As we see Epic Z-Ray coming down with the spike, already getting a large chunk of ult charge from that. As the teams are trying to duke it out on top, but now the Ducklings just went all the way around the high ground here to get to the point. Emo, though, able to find the first kill on to several, but Mobilize comes back with the DMAC onto Bluegill. Likeable Orb getting really low too, and Mobilize finding them out as well. Colguy Pepsi on the high ground, raining in some damage as Ads does find Greasy, but Basilisk coming right back, finding Ads. Another DMAC. Frosty finding PK Starstorm there. Colguy Pepsi able to get the DMAC Diva of Bluegill there. Several coming right back from death, getting the revenge kill on the Emo and Frosty, cleaning up this team fight with a kill there to Basilisk. And now the Nectarines take control of the point first here.
Yeah, again, Duckling's composition to start off the round seems really well thought out, but they aren't able to execute on that well thought out plan. And Nectarines just said, okay, you want to take the 1v1s, we will take them, but we will do it better. You had Cola Guy Pepsi up on that high ground, just being able to dish out Discord orbs without any sort of contention. You would typically expect Basilisk or PK Starstorm to go and contest that, remove that damage buff, but at the end of the day, Nectarines was just able to keep it, and now we're starting to see some more repercussions coming out here. We see Bluegill demec'd at the start of the fight, and that is going to take out an entire tank player from your team. You can't act as a tank if you don't have the HP to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to agree with you there. As Colguy Pepsi finds out PK Starstorm again there. So far, what I thought would be a pivotal role that PK Starstorm on that Sombra has not necessarily come out to fruition yet. Transcendence being forced out here by Colguy Pepsi to keep himself alive, but the Nectarines are forcing the Ducklings back into their own spawn here a little bit.
Yeah, we start to see here Nectarines is starting to play a very similar playstyle to how they did on that last map on Hollywood. They have their backline just dishing out damage from a distance, and then their front line is just there to disrupt Ducklings as they try to engage. Several now managing to get an entry frag onto Basilisk as this fight is going to start. We do see a valuable bubble coming out from Likeable Orb, and a big Sombra ultimate catches out 5 members of Nectarines, but no follow-up is going to come out. There's no damage here to sustain, and Mobilized is actually going to get PK Starstorm here. Likeable Orb, though, trades out from Mobilized, and one tank down is not a position you want to be in as Nectarines. Colguy Pepsi's going to find Basilisk once again, but Greasy trades out Frosty in exchange, and it just seems like Nectarines is not able to get away with these picks as easily right this second. Bluegill going to release that self-destruct, and the point is going to flip 99-0 to start off Ducklings' possession in this round. Colguy Pepsi now going to fall ADS as well. No supports on Nectarines, and they are going to have to back out right now.
Yeah, Mobilize deciding just to jump off the map there after getting demec'd. Just to regroup with the team right now. Like you said, Ducklings finally getting the first cap of the point here. 99% means it was into overtime there. Nectarines are going to come back with a healthy amount of ultimates, half their team ready to go. Ducklings, on the other hand, are about the same here. Likeable Orb's about to get his Primal Rage. Emote is close to another beat. And we see Epic Z-Ray coming in with the minefield. Finds one as Ads finds a second. Hack coming out on Epic Z-Ray. Those Ads continues to go in. Another visor being popped here by several. Finds one with it. Colguy Pepsi cleaning up right now. And several finds Basilisk there. And the point has flipped, and no one for the Ducklings is able to get back in time to touch as the Nectarines take the first point on Busan here.
Yeah, it does just seem once again that Nectarines is really controlling the flow of the game. They're controlling the state of the game that they need. They are adding the positioning that they need. They're controlling the the ultimate flow very well, staggering those ultimates so that they are most effective rather than just piling them all on at once and hoping for the best. Whereas it seems that over on the side of the Ducklings, you have two or three players that are making really good plays, but the rest of the team just seems split off and unable to be able to capitalize in the same way. So that really is the big distinction between these two teams, in that only half of the Ducklings seems to have the coordination that the Nectarines is really relying on to win these fights.
Yeah, we're seeing a swap here. Several swapping off the Soldier, going to the Sombra now instead. Really no other changes for the side of the Nectarines here. Trying to get a hack off there onto Epic Z-Ray, but Epic Z-Ray able to spike down just before that hack was able to fully get off. Bluegill currently hacked at the moment by several, as the Ducklings, oh, finally a hack onto Epic Z-Ray. Ducklings taking control of the point to start things off here. Epic Z-Ray thinking that maybe that hack was going to be done just in time for him to get a spike down on it. But the Ducklings are first to strike here, or first to the cap here on this point of Oasis. But Frosty able to get a DMAC on to Bluegill.
Yeah, and we're actually going to see Bluegill is going to fall to ads here. Frosty manages to take out Likeable Orb. PK Starstorm dropping very low. Several traded in exchange, but you will take that for 5 eliminations onto Ducklings. And Nectarines, once again, getting the possession of the point here.
Yeah, the Nectarines played that incredibly smart there. They let the Ducklings have it, and then essentially once they capped it, they just jumped pretty much on the Ducklings there, taking that point back incredibly fast, only after 19%, I believe that's what I'm seeing here. Frosty does have a pulse bomb, several close to an EMP. Mobilize does have a bomb. We could see a nice little combo here of a bomb EMP. Epic Z-Ray also does have a minefield ready. Several with that EMP ready, going up in the sky right now. Gets it, gets all 6 members of the Ducklings. 1 falls, 2 fall, make that 3 falls. Epic Z-Ray is going in off this EMP. There goes the DMAC onto Bluegill, but Bluegill able to find several, but the damage has already been done in this team fight, as the Nectarines pretty much handily take that one.
Yeah, that is how you follow up from a big EMP. Several really didn't do a whole lot. Did get that whole team in the EMP, but it was the follow-up from the rest of the Nectarines that was able to secure it. Something that PK Starstorm was just barely missing out on the last map. But hopefully with PK Starstorm's ultimate coming online now, we will be able to see this. Self-destruct being thrown out early now from Mobilized here. And that's going to be not going to find much, but an EMP coming out now. Does manage to catch 3 members of the Nectarines, and Mobilized is going to be demexed from that early. We do see the sound barrier coming out just to give a bit more sustain over onto the Ducklings, and they're able to finish off Mobilized and Cola Guy Pepsi. Ads are both going to fall to this death loss, and this is the fight that the Ducklings needed. It just one after another, piling in the damage and the ultimates here. But was it too much? You see now, they used 4 ultimates just to win that one fight, whereas Nectarine's last fight, they only had to use 2. So really having to use a lot more utility for the same effect, but hopefully Ducklings here is able to hold on for the rest of this map.
Yeah, the thing is, though, I have to give some credit to the Ducklings. Yes, they did use 3 ultimates, or 4 ultimates to take that point, but they did force 2 ultimates out of the Peachis as Bluegill and Emo go in, find the first 2 kills here. Mobilize getting hacked. Ducklings starting to show some signs of life right now. Epic Z-Ray getting that minefield down in the background, finds 2 somehow, but Bluegill and Basilic here just going and cleaning up the Peachis. Epic Z-Ray finds a 3rd one with his minefield, but gets booped off by Emo there, and the Ducklings pretty much win that team fight there. A very, very scrappy and not really put together team fight, but a team fight it is.
Yeah, ironically, despite getting 3 eliminations, that might be one of the least useful minefields, purely because the whole side of Ducklings here gets to come back. We are going to see the hack coming out onto Likeable Orb, who is going to fall now, and Mobilized is going to get a pick onto Emo. Bluegill and Greasy both going down as well. PK Starstorm is going to fall, and it's just Basilisk left alive. Is going to be taken out now. Nectarines able to capture the point with all 6 members alive. The overtime wick is burning away, and no one from Ducklings is able to contest. Nectarines going up 2-0 in the series.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it was as dominant as Hollywood was, but there were a lot of times in Busan where the Nectarines just pretty much controlled the pace of all the fights here. As we do hop back in here with the play of the game, Epic Z-Ray finding 3 here after the mine, after that EMP from several, is that play of the game. They're going over to the Nectarines. Nectarines now up 2-0 in the series, are on game point right now. Ducklings, though, showed a lot of signs of life in that second map. Not enough to necessarily get them over the hump and get them into that win column in the series, but enough to make me think that this could potentially be a series.
Yeah, so there was a very wonderful map to see, but we are going to be taking a short break. We'll be back in about 5 minutes to see the second half of this series. Hello, everyone, and welcome back once again to the Encore Overwatch League. We are once again joined watching the Nectarines versus Ducklings. Nectarines currently up 2-0 in the series. I'm once again Fox, joined by Dex, and Dex. So far, we're seeing a very one-sided series come out from the Nectarines. How are you feeling, just very briefly, about the series so far?
I mean, there have been signs of life from the Ducklings. They had one sign of life on Hollywood. They weren't able to get a tick on their offensive thing. And their defensive stand on Hollywood, they did hold the Nectarines for a fight, but that was it. They only held them for one fight. After that, the Nectarines just kind of rolled through them. On Busan, we saw them, I believe, and both me and you talked about this during the break, they kind of did take that next step of improving a little bit more. They just weren't able to get over the hump.
Yeah, absolutely. They won a couple more fights. They even took possession of the point for what seemed like could possibly have been something big. They were eventually flipped back by the Nectarines, but gradually throughout this series, they are starting to get better. So, as we go into this next map, me and you were just talking about Watchpoint Gibraltar. We can possibly expect to see Nectarines lose maybe a couple of fights. This is my personal prediction. I think Ducklings is going to be able to push the payload towards the end of first point. I do unfortunately think we're going to see another first point hold coming out from Nectarines like we saw on Hollywood. But I think that Ducklings here has a chance to win, even if they do get held at first point. That is a point that gets held at quite a lot on Watchpoint Gibraltar, so it's going to be interesting to see how these teams manage this map and control the space, because that's really what this map is all about. As we see ourselves floating through third point here, I don't think we're going to get this far, but Dex, what do you think about this map coming up?
Well, Watchpoint Gibraltar is one of my favorite maps to see, and I see it a lot. And almost a straight mirror match is something I did not expect to see coming out of the gate. Now we're starting to see, each side make different swaps, different players. Several going over to the Ashe instead of Frosty, which is an interesting choice in my opinion. As we saw, I believe. No, actually, no. We did see Frosty on the Tracer in that second map, and they were really good on that Tracer. However, the Ducklings, on the other hand, going with a Genji Tracer line is really interesting to me. I guess they're expecting to see the Nectarines come out here kind of with a hold on the high ground here, but they're not going to get that. Oh, and we see the Ducklings immediately come back out with making swaps to go to a more of a dive comp here. Looks like they want to get on that high ground and just jump on the Nectarines to start off here. Try to find the first pick here, and when the Ducklings have won their team fights, they've done a great job at finding the Nectarines support line first.
Yeah, and we're going to see a dive coming out here onto the top line. This is a very burst-based dive composition from the Ducklings, like you were saying, a much more typical thing for the modern era of Overwatch, unlike that Genji. We are going to see Basilisk fall quite early on. That is going to be some value coming out for the Nectarines, but Ducklings shouldn't be too disheartened. Basilisk playing the Echo is a very fast-charging ultimate on a character. And they are actually going to push halfway through this first point already, so making decent progress towards my prediction point of the end of the first point. Ducklings here coming out with a stronger offense than I personally originally expected. PK Starstorm dropping really low, actually going to fall along with Emote though. So this might be the start of a hold coming out from Nectarines as they force the rest of the Ducklings into this mega health room and just trickle them all down one by one.
Yeah, honestly, if you ask me, the Nectarines kind of let the Ducklings have all the space they have gotten so far, because once that cart gets past the bottom point of that ravine there, it gets incredibly hard for the offensive team to come back and get started pushing it again. And once they got past that and got towards that first point there, the Nectarines just jumped on them and handily won a team fight. Now let's look at this. The Nectarines about to have all 6 of their ultimates ready to go right now. And Frosty pops off gets a stick there onto Basilisk to start stuff off. Epic Z Ray does come in, but gets slept in the backline. Does get woken up, though. Only one member of the Ducklings has fallen so far, but it looks like they're just going to fall back and play this safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Nectarines here really controlling every access point onto this cart is why it's such a dangerous position. They're contesting these high ground pushes. We are going to see an anti-nade coming out onto Epic's Ray, but it's Several who's finding the pick onto Basilisk. And now PK Starstorm also going to pull up a big bomb from Mobilize, catches 3 members of the Ducklings, and this is how Nectarines is going to stop any pushes. They're just going to cycle their high damage ultimates, cycle the high value utility, and just stop Ducklings from even being able to touch the point. The cart is going to be rolling back a little bit, so now Ducklings might start being able to put a bit of pressure on to the objective here, but that's just going to result in Nectarines dropping down on the point and possibly dealing a lot of damage into that backline.
Greasy, though, getting a nice sleep onto Epic Z-Ray again as Bob and a rally coming out from each side right now. Frosty finds the first one on to Basilisk again to start off this engagement. Likeable Orb getting incredibly low, but able to fall back and get healed back up. The Ducklings actually do have most of their ultimate ready here. Emo did use a rally in that last engagement, but the Nectarines just doing a great job of forcing the Ducklings back. And with only 30 seconds left to go, the Ducklings are running out of time.
Yeah, they are in fact running out of time, but if you look at the ultimates on the side of Nectarines, Cola Guy Pepsi really has the only clutch ultimate to come out here with that Transcendence. ADS is actually going to fall from that primal rage of Likeable Orb at the moment, and so is Several as well. PK Storm is going to take himself out, probably with that Pulse Bomb going out there, but we're going to see a lot of ultimates coming out from Ducklings. They're pushing very close. Only 4 meters left to go now, but they're in overtime. Likeable Orb is going to fall to Frosty. Cola Guy Pepsi's managing to take out Greasy, and Emo's going to fall now as well. Ducklings no longer looking in such a strong position. They need to get 1 or 2 picks to stay in the game, but Bluegill is going to fall now, and Cola Guy traded in exchange, but Basilisk is going to go down as well, and the overtime wick is decreasing. Ducklings were held less than 1 point on the map.
Yeah, 4 meters was all they needed there to cap that first point and prolong their push there. But the Nectarines, even with losing the 3 members to start that team fight, were just able to stall out long enough with kills coming both from Epic Z-Ray and Cola Guy Pepsi just to get that fight to be back even. And with how far the Ducklings had pushed that cart, it was going to be a long walk for all of them to get back to it. Nectarines now have a win condition. All they need to do is essentially just cap the first point, and they win this series and keep their perfect season alive.
Yeah, but at the same time, Ducklings has their win condition. All they need is less than 82.09 meters for the Nectarines, and that is a very doable win condition here. It's entirely possible that they could hold either this first corner or somewhere as we go down into that canyon beneath the map. So it could be possible that Ducklings holds here, but we've seen how aggressively dominant Nectarines likes to be in this series, so it's going to be a very interesting thing to see which way this falls. The compositions here coming out are quite interesting. We see Epic's Ray on the Roadhog with mobilized on that Diva, teleport onto the high ground. This is interesting positioning coming out from Nectarines.
The Nectarines fully expected the Ducklings to be on the high ground, but all the Ducklings are in the staircase instead. Swamp's coming out because the Nectarines just didn't see him. Several finding the first kill on the PK Starstorm there, and that should start everything out here. Nectarines just forcing the Ducklings into this small side room right now. Immortality Field having to be used there. Cola Guy Pepsi does get the DMAC on to Bluegill as the Nectarines finally start to push the cart a little bit, but right now they are pretty much just kind of bullying the Ducklings in this small room. Yeah, no one has fallen as Several now starts the killing onto Likeable Orb. Basilisk though does find the DMAC onto Mobilize, but the Nectarines are still just pushing this cart right now and keeping the Ducklings behind them. Already a damage matrix coming out from Greasy. Bluegill able to find a Cola Guy Pepsi several, still getting his name there on leaderboard, finding the immortality field, and then finding Greasy. And look at this! The card is already almost capped! The Ducklings have been so far bullied back into it. 3 kills down already. Make that 4 for the Nectarines, and the Nectarines smell victory. They see it, and they claim it incredibly fast there.
Yeah, what an amazing push from the Nectarines there, all in one fight. Not even a fight, because the cart was never even in the fight. They pushed Ducklings out of the way. They said, no, you're not playing this round, and they took the victory that they earned in this series.
Yeah, the Nectarines, they weren't finding the kills there, and I'm trying to think maybe if that was their plan. Just try to force the Ducklings there to stay back essentially in the Nectarines' own spawn as 2 of the members of the Nectarines just pushed the card. And that's essentially what happened there. The players that the Nectarines did find out and get killed were able to come back, but they weren't able to necessarily contest that card very long.
Yeah, it was really a dominant display from Nectarines. Honestly, I look forward to seeing the next match from either of these teams, but Nectarines in particular showing that they intend to keep this win streak alive, 5-0 in the tournament, as they're going to be going into the next series, which is a very strong scoreline to have. When you're in a tournament playing against players who are high diamond, low masters players, it's quite motivational, really, to see that you can play as well as you have and with such unison as they have. It's a very well coordinated team. I almost want to say a masterclass of how you should play, but the Ducklings shouldn't feel too disheartened because at the end of the day, they played their best. It just wasn't quite good enough, and this is great footage for them to use for VOD reviews. It's going to be such a great learning experience. Honestly, we've spoke to so many players in the past, and this seems to be what they all agree.
Yeah. But talking about speaking to players, we're going to take a short break and be right back with our player of the game interview. Welcome back to the booth, everyone. As always, or as again, I'm Dextron. That is Disastrous Fox. And with us tonight for our interview is our player of the game, Cola Guy Pepsi. Dude, what an
Hello.
amazing performance by you and the Nectarines as a whole tonight.
Yep, I mean, we played very well, I think, as a team. Definitely had a lot of teamwork. Some of the stuff in comms was a bit messy, but we definitely brought it back.
Yeah, honestly, your team seemed so well organized throughout the play. I think organized, well oiled is like a lot of the sort of terms that I was at least using throughout the stream today. I have a very quick question for you, and that's that we saw quite often yourself playing the Zenyatta, a very powerful pick when he's left uncontested with that Discord orb. And a lot
Yep.
of the times you were playing kind of separate from the front line of your team by quite a large distance and just pumping damage in from a distance, pumping those Discord orbs in. Was it always your plan as a team to have like a backline and a frontline act as two separate units, or is that just sort of how the chips fell in the game?
No, it was definitely planned. I specifically told my Brig and my Diva where I was looking to play. I was calling the rotations, and then from there, depending on where they were going, we would set up a dive with our ball. I would Discord, and then during that time, we would just have all the focus on whoever was slammed, whoever was Discord, and then at that point, I'm too far away for them to deal with me, and then they basically have to look at whoever is going in, like the ball, the tracer, the diva, and I can just basically sit back and just pump damage at that point.
Yeah, it sounds like a really good strategy, and we saw a couple of times throughout the game where it certainly worked quite well for you today. So another question I had for you guys is like you were talking about how you can call out where you want to play, but who is the main shot caller for your team? Would you say?
I would say it's a combination of me and the main tank, so the ball.
I see. Do you guys like often practice like who's going to be shot calling the most in certain? I don't know if it's certain maps or just in general. Uh, is calling out where the enemies are or like who's shouting out everything something you practice as a team?
So for the scouting, primarily it would be the tracer and the ball, since they have the best view of where they're going and where they're rotating. And then from there, we usually set up a dive if we're playing like ball comp. Zen needs to be safe. Or if we're playing like double shield, we're ready to pull or and then follow up or uh, rotate accordingly.
Yeah, the last question I personally have for you is just out of the three maps you played today, is there any one in particular that you enjoyed the most? And then is there anyone that you feel like you could have improved on and maybe you need to do a bit of VOD reviews for?
I would definitely say my Zen is really good. I'm confident in my Zen play, so I would say Busan, just for that. I felt like I was doing a lot there in the Zen. It definitely felt like my BAP is definitely not the best, so I would definitely have to look at that a little bit more. I feel like I could definitely be looking to pump out more damage rather than heals, since BAP can basically DPS by himself, and just focusing on my positioning as well at that point.
Yeah, amazing. I don't personally have any more questions for you, but I believe Dex does have a few for you now.
So I'll try to keep these short because I know you probably want to get on with your night and celebrate the win. But so far, you guys have had a great season as a team. 5-0, haven't dropped a map yet. Is there any pressure that gives you guys or that puts on you guys? You know, you guys don't want to lose. I imagine that first map, and you guys probably don't want to lose a series at all this entire season. Is there any added pressure because of that?
Honestly, I don't really feel it. I mean, if we lose a map, then it happens. We haven't played uh, the top two other teams, so B Team Beefers and then LSFC. We haven't played them yet. but I still feel very confident that we're gonna beat them, even if we do lose a map or two.
All right, and one final thing before you go, is there anyone you want to shout out while you're here?
Uh, I guess I would just
You can
shout out
talk
my
yourself
main
too.
supports. Nah, I'm gonna shout out my main support. He's always got my back, and I can definitely rely on him to keep me safe.
Amazing. So,
All right.
honestly, Cola guy, it's been really fun interviewing you today, and hopefully you have a lot of celebrating to do and to enjoy with the rest of your night. So we'll let you go now, and have a good day or night.
All right, thank you guys. Good night.
And
Right, and
Dex,
now
what an amazing series we had. I feel like it was quite an interesting, fulfilling series, at least for me personally. It was very one sided, but what are your final thoughts coming into this?
I mean, final thoughts coming into it are pretty much the same kind of thoughts I had going into the game. I thought that going into the game, the Nectarines are probably one of the more dominant and scary teams in the Encore Overwatch Division 2. And so far, they have proven, and are still going to probably prove that they are one of these scary teams right now. Not dropping a map through 5 games, yeah, Colgate Pepsi said they haven't played the other two top teams yet, but still, it's been 5 games. They haven't dropped a map yet. That's hard to do in any league.
Yeah, so are you predicting a clean 7-0 sweep from the Nectarines here? Or do you think they're going to like maybe drop a match or two against one of these top teams?
I don't think they'll drop a match, but I don't think that map win streak is going to stay alive through the regular season here. If it does, then I would only say that that paints a bigger target on their back for whenever playoffs start.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But there's no story better than going into playoffs undefeated and making your way all the way through. That is really a dominant victory, and I'm pretty sure it's a victory every team would take if they had the chance to. So,
Yes.
lastly, Dex, before we leave, is there anyone you would like to shout out?
Uh, Well, I want to shout out you for being a trooper. It is currently, I know, past 3 a.m. where you are right now. So I want to shout you out for coming on the cast with us tonight, or coming on the cast with me. I want to shout out just also our producer and director of Spook and Hippie. First time working with Spook, and it was great. Hippie was great as always. But that's all I have to shout out. What about you, man?
Well, you shouted out the producers, so I feel like I'm going to shout out Unfeatured and Kothar as our observers. And yes, I did in fact have to look over at my other screen to read their names because I may have a short memory once it's this early in the morning. But also, I
Same.
just want to give a slight shout out. I'll trade the favor. Shout out to Dexatron, everyone who's watching. He's really like hardworking. Made sure that he filled every second of his day with casting, so he just barely made it on time to get here. So really a hardworking caster. Honestly, Dex, it's been lovely working for you. It's been great being able to cast yet another series for the Peachies. And on that note, I think we're going to end it here. Thank you, everyone who's come to watch, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next stream.
Have a good night, y'all.